In this tutorial, we cover how to catch a true sport fishing giant of Australian waters, the barramundi. We'll first show you some top barramundi locations, followed by a rundown on the ideal conditions for the species. We'll then go over the all-important questions of casting and other techniques that are key to targeting big barras. We'll then cover some ideal tackle setups for you to use, followed by some ideal choices for baits and lures on the day. So where can barras be found? Barramundi naturally inhabit what is virtually the top half of Australia, being found from Shark Bay on the western coast, leading all along the coastlines of the Northern Territories, and throughout much of the Queensland coast, up to the waterways of Brisbane. So what are ideal barramundi conditions? Barramundi are something of a complex fish in that they inhabit both salt and fresh water, depending on their gender and season. This includes brackish inner estuaries, as well as the salt waters of outer estuaries, open beaches, and offshore reefs. They are also found in freshwater rivers and creeks, as well as lakes and landlocked lagoons. If it's the big-size barra you are after, these will typically be the big breeding females, which mostly inhabit the lower parts of the estuary where the salinity is higher. But for a better chance overall of catching any size barra, it can actually pay off to fish further upstream at certain key times of year, as we'll soon be explaining. The best time to target both big barra and smaller breeding males is within the lower estuaries throughout the wet season between October to March, in particular from October to December during breeding season. By the time the dry season hits, the more average-sized fish will return upstream to inland waterways, leaving the larger females downstream. The inland fish will be more concentrated during the dry season, but will also be more sluggish and less willing to take a bait, due to the fact they need to conserve energy. Make sure to check the local regulations of anywhere you intend to fish for things like open seasons, fish size limits, and keep limits. Even when legal to keep fish for the table, be sure to include a good amount of catch and release practice to help ensure you'll have plenty of decent fish stocks for yourself later on, as well as for future generations of anglers. Dawn and dusk during low light levels are key feeding times for predatory fish, and barra are no exception. This is particularly true in water that is relatively clear. Barramundi actually tend to feed in water that is murky and cloudy, and in clearer river systems, such as in their southern ranges, they will actively seek out the cloudier areas of water. Conversely, in rivers that are heavily colored for more of the time due to their sediment makeup, it may be more practical to seek out the slightly clearer parts of the water system to fish more practically, especially when lure fishing or live baiting. This will be especially true after heavy rains or large tides. But if you want to give yourself the very best chance, there's some important tactics that will give you a serious edge. The transition zone where salt readily mixes with fresh water is the hot spot to target estuary barra. This will typically be anywhere between 15 to 50 miles up a river system. Holes and channels will be top features to cast to no matter where you fish, though this will be especially true upriver in the dry season, especially upstream of any causeways or man-made structure obstructing the water. Mangroves, logs, and snags, which are dead stumps sticking out of the water, are also top features which hold food and ambush points for hungry barramundi. The same is true of any rock bars situated in an outer estuary. Aside from the structure itself providing habitat for food, it also affects current in an important way. The currents bring both barramundi and the food that they feed on. This will be typical of strong current areas, such as the main estuary channel. Barras will sit just outside the stronger flow to conserve energy and pick off prey that struggles with the stronger flow. An example of an area of slack current is a back eddy. These areas are essentially weaker areas of current that flow in a circle immediately next to the main straight flow of current. Back eddies are typically found immediately down current of obstructions, such as river bends, areas of land that jut out, and many of the features we mentioned before. The direction of flow will change from the flood to the ebb. This will incite the barra to move on to find a new area of unexposed slack current. When casting, aim for the area where the slack meets the strong flow. This area is often referred to as the seam. A very important note on croc safety: barras inhabit much of the same distribution as the crocs. Crocodiles can take animals much larger than themselves, very suddenly from the water's edge and are often almost undetectable in the murky colored water. Always keep a solid clear distance from the water's edge, 5 meters being a good distance, as this is the typical length of a full-grown saltwater crocodile. Never stand on structure overhanging the water, such as logs and branches. If boat fishing or fishing from a jetty, always keep your arms, legs, and head away from the edge of the platform. If a croc takes your catch or any of your gear, consider it gone and stay well clear. So what would be an ideal tackle setup for barras? Assuming you want to potentially catch a monster, here we focus on estuary fishing. This particular setup also keeps your options open for either shore or boat, as well as for both lure or bait fishing. We use a 7 to 8 foot heavy power spinning rod that casts between 15 to 50 grams or half an ounce to 2 ounces. This will be great for any long casts that are needed and allows us to cast a varied size of lures and baits. In terms of the taper or action of the rod, this will be more down to your personal choice. A fast taper action will put you in better touch with your lures and pull through snags effectively. On the other hand, slower action rods may produce a more secure hook hold during moments of slack on the line, as well as absorb sudden shock more effectively. A spinning or fixed spool reel anywhere between 4 to 6,000 will be ample with easy usability for both lures and baits. For mainline, you can use 30 pounds braid or 18 pounds mono that is a low stretch variety. Both braid and lower stretch mono can put you in better touch with lures, as well as help you strike into the barra's hard mouth more effectively than high stretch mono varieties. If using any kind of bottom rig, whether bait or lure, use a mono rubbing leader of anywhere between 30 to 40 pounds breaking strain. If you only plan to fish non-sinking lures or baits presented with floats, a rubbing leader will usually not be required. If using any kind of lure, then a standard lure hook length leader of at least 30 pounds can be used. This can be better for working directly over snags. But here we describe a setup for presenting either live or dead baits on the bottom for fishing areas of clear ground. Running ledges provide great bite detection. Barras will better take a moving bait but are also sluggish when feeding, so only use just enough weight to hold position in the current. A hook length leader of at least 20 inches will give your bait better movement to entice a bite. Mono hook lengths provide more stretch, acting as a buffer for playing the fish. This will be especially true if using braided mainline. Fluorocarbon hook lengths can allow you to better hook into the hard mouth of the fish on the strike, especially when using mono mainline, but it requires specific knots to maintain proper knot strength. Circle hooks can be great for bait fishing. Never strike when using circle hooks. Simply set the drag tighter and let the fish hook up. Any size between 5/0 to 7/0 will be suitable. J hooks can also be used, but you will be required to strike when solid bite indication is detected. J hooks between size 3/0 to 5/0 will be fine to use. Any hooks you use for barra should always be strong pattern hooks that are also good and sharp. So what about baits and lures? For lure choice, try to pick lures that provide good vibration attraction in the murky water conditions, as barras are great at finding food through touch in cloudy water. Fluorescent colors tend to be the best for visual attraction in cloudy water, though dark-colored lures can also cast a great silhouette in more lightly colored water. Be sure to use plenty of slow retrieves, as barra can be cautious at taking a lure. It's also been suggested that barras will spit lures of smaller sizes more easily, so try lures of different sizes for different size fish if this becomes an issue. As our rig choice gives us active bait movement in the current, we can use either live or dead baits. Prawns and shrimp are a great choice, as are many fish baits including mullet, whiting, gar, and herring.